There's something strange about flying. The moment you're in the air, suspended miles above the ground in a thin metal tube, you're at the mercy of the elements. No matter how experienced the pilots are or how advanced the technology may be, nature can always throw a curveball that no one is prepared for. That's exactly what happened on Flight 732. It started as a routine flight, a small commercial plane carrying about 40 passengers from a coastal city to an island resort. I was on that flight, sitting near the back, next to a window. The sky had been clear when we took off, one of those perfect days for flying. We were all relaxed, some passengers chatting quietly, others napping or watching movies. The cabin crew moved up and down the aisle, offering drinks and snacks. The first sign of trouble was the storm clouds. It was subtle at first, just a few dark shapes in the distance, low on the horizon. I glanced out the window and noticed them creeping closer, but I didn't think much of it. I had flown through storms before. But this time the clouds seemed different. They were thick and heavy, swirling in strange patterns as if they had a mind of their own. An announcement crackled over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. We've encountered some unexpected weather ahead. Nothing to be alarmed about, but we'll be entering a storm system shortly. Please remain seated and keep your seatbelts fastened." There was a slight tension in the air after that, but no one panicked. It's normal to fly through rough weather from time to time. The plane began to shake gently as we entered the storm, the occasional bump here and there. The clouds outside the window were now a deep, angry gray, and flashes of lightning flickered in the distance. Then, without warning, the turbulence hit. The plane lurched violently to the side, sending gasps through the cabin. My stomach dropped as we dipped, and then rose suddenly, as if the plane was being tossed by an unseen hand. Drinks spilled, and a few overhead compartments popped open, luggage tumbling to the floor. The fastened seatbelt sign blinked furiously as the flight attendants rushed to secure the cabin. It was getting worse by the second. The plane was shaking so hard it felt like it was going to tear apart. I gripped the armrests, knuckles white, as I glanced around at the other passengers. Faces were pale with fear, and you could hear the low hum of nervous whispers, a few stifled sobs from somewhere near the front. A deafening crack of thunder erupted right next to the plane, and that's when it happened. A bolt of lightning struck us. I felt it more than I saw it, a jarring, electric shock that rattled the entire aircraft. The lights flickered, and the engine made a sickening sputtering noise. For a second, it felt like everything stopped: the plane, my heartbeat, time itself. Then came the plunge. We dropped. The descent was sharp and terrifying. People screamed as the plane fell, gravity yanking us toward the ground. I could see the fear in the eyes of the flight attendants as they tried to remain calm, but it was clear they were just as scared as we were. I caught a glimpse of the pilots through the open cockpit door, their faces tight with concentration as they fought to regain control. The wind howled outside, and the rain battered the windows so hard it sounded like the plane was being pelted with rocks. I was sure we were going to crash. Then, through the chaos, I heard the captain's voice again, his tone steady but strained. "Brace for impact. Brace for impact." In the split second before we hit the water, everything went quiet. It was the strangest thing, as if the world had gone silent for just a moment, giving us all time to brace ourselves for what was about to come. And then we crashed. The impact was brutal. The plane slammed into the ocean with a force that knocked the wind out of me. Water surged through the broken windows, and I was thrown forward, my head slamming against the seat in front of me. The sound was deafening: the screech of metal tearing apart, the roar of the storm outside, and the panicked screams of passengers. We were sinking. Somehow, I managed to unbuckle my seatbelt and push myself up, gasping for air as the icy water rose around me. The tail of the plane had split off during the crash, and a large chunk of the rear section was missing. I could see out into the open sea, waves crashing into the broken fuselage as water flooded the cabin. People were panicking, scrambling to find a way out. I saw a flight attendant trying to open the emergency exit door, her hands shaking as she struggled with the latch. A few passengers were already swimming through the debris, trying to escape before the plane went under completely. I followed suit, pushing my way through the rising water toward the exit. My legs felt heavy, my body sluggish from the cold. The salt water stung my eyes and lungs as I fought to stay afloat. Finally, I managed to crawl out through the broken rear section of the plane, pulling myself onto a large piece of debris that was floating in the water. I looked around, trying to get my bearings. The storm was still raging, waves crashing against the remnants of the plane as it sank deeper into the sea. But we were close to land. I could see the faint outline of a rocky shore not far away, illuminated by the occasional flash of lightning. Somehow we survived. But not all of us. As I clung to the piece of debris, I saw people in the water, struggling to stay afloat. Some were calling out for help, while others were silent, their bodies limp and motionless as the waves carried them away. The tail of the plane had been severed completely in the crash, and I knew that anyone who had been sitting in the back had little chance of surviving. I heard shouting and turned to see a rescue boat speeding toward us through the storm. It was a small miracle that help had arrived so quickly. I later found out that our distress signal had been picked up by a nearby Coast Guard station just before we hit the water, and they had dispatched rescue teams immediately. The next few hours were a blur. I remember being pulled from the water, wrapped in a blanket, and taken to the shore. I remember the feeling of solid ground beneath my feet and the overwhelming relief of being alive. But I also remember the look in the eyes of the other survivors, haunted, terrified, as if they couldn't quite believe what had just happened. In the days that followed, there was a lot of talk about the crash, what caused it, how we survived, and why we were so close to land when the storm hit. Investigators said the lightning strike had knocked out some of the plane's systems, but the pilots had managed to make a controlled emergency landing in the water. If we had been farther from shore, if the rescue teams hadn't reached us in time, well, I don't like to think about what might have happened. But there's one thing that still bothers me, something I can't shake. On the night of the crash, when I was floating in the water, clinging to that piece of debris, I could have sworn I saw something. It was just a brief glimpse, barely more than a shadow beneath the waves, but it was there, something large, dark, and moving through the water, circling the wreckage. At first, I thought it was my imagination, just my mind playing tricks on me after the trauma of the crash. But then, when I spoke to some of the other survivors, I realized I wasn't the only one who had seen it. A few of them mentioned the same thing, a dark shape in the water, something watching us, waiting. The official reports say nothing about it, of course. Just a routine emergency landing, a freak storm, a lucky rescue. But I can't stop thinking about what might have been lurking beneath the surface that night in the dark, cold water. Maybe it was just the storm playing tricks on us. Or maybe there's something else out there, something waiting in the depths. Either way, I don't think I'll ever get on a plane again.